away, hurry up, ay, 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 away, away, way, oh, way, hurry up, away, way, ha, hurry up, away, hurry up, ay, 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 away,
Hi everyone, welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host Kira Young, and you've reached me on Revolution Radio, and as always we're simulcasting with Real Liberty Media. Tonight I have invited back William Thomas Anderson. We didn't get a long enough conversation last time he was here, so let me see if he's available. I'm pulling him in, broadcasting live from my truck in an undisclosed location. William, are you there?
Kira, hi there.
Hi, welcome back to The Bridge. Glad you could make it.
I am glad to be here, thank you.
I was just telling everybody that I am broadcasting live from my truck, as usual, because I live in the woods, and that means that I live on the other side of the digital divide, and I have to find interesting and creative ways to use the internet.
Oh, gotcha. Right. Amongst many things, I'm starting a log house or a longhouse building project. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I live in a rainforest, so we've got, I'm in need of building a recording studio, and I thought, why don't I, check out how to build an ancient longhouse, and do that. So yeah, I've been getting plans together and tools and all that stuff, and should be starting here in the next few weeks. But
wow, that's an exciting project. Have you some natives involved in your project? Have you met any other people that can help you with your plans and guide you?
Yeah, I've got a couple of folks that have been sharing input. It's going to be a solo project, though, not to sound peculiar, but I'm going to build it myself, and I'm going to use one chainsaw, one axe, and possibly a few other hand tools, but really keep it. Each piece of the house is going to be an intimate adventure. Each log and marrying the logs together. I am not doing it commercially, so I get the opportunity to work on it from an artistic perspective. So, really, frankly, it's going to be a work of art, if you will. At least, hopefully, it'll look like it.
So, how long have you wanted to do this? For a long time?
Yeah, it's been on my radar for several years, and it's just been a matter of having the time and the inclination to actually step into it. So, the time is now. I've been waiting for my gut, and my gut's saying go. So,
excellent. So, are you looking at alternative energy sources and things like that to go along with your project, or is it going to just be strictly old school?
Well, I need to have power, so that's in order to run a recording studio. It's I don't.
The generator's not going to cut it.
No, it'd be terribly loud, wouldn't it? Although
Yeah, it would.
I do have a gas generator, but I do have a battery setup that I use for when I tour. I've got several batteries with a charger and an inverter and so on in my touring van. So I'll probably use that to some degree, but I'm just going to have to run power to it. So at some stage anyway.
Yeah. My dream is to get off the grid, electrical grid, namely.
Yeah.
And, for many reasons. One, it's not sustainable or affordable. And two, it's going to go down at any point.
It is a matter of time. The clock is ticking. And, the actuaries have been run, all the major governments of the world are it's just a matter of time. But absolutely, I am preparing to do solar. My only problem is I live in the Pacific Northwest, and the sun is a rare guest, and sneaking between the rain clouds. So it's not really a major source of power. But and I don't get much for wind. I am 1,000 feet off of Taylor Bay, which is I live outside of the greater Seattle area. So, but not enough wind to do anything with a wind turbine either. So, I'm looking forward to this. What do they call it? Zero energy? No. That's left my brain at this point, but where you can produce energy from magnets or other forms
free
of
energy?
power.
Free energy?
Free energy for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
0 point, maybe that's what it is. It's running around my head. I'll figure it out when I stop thinking about it, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very excited to get off the grid. I live on 5 acres in a very remote area. I've got a 1 mile dirt private drive to get to my house, and of course we have a well, and so we're most of the way there. But getting a really cool log house built is going to be very exciting. Really looking forward to it, and it is as much as a practical thing, it's a spiritual move forward for me as well. All things that we do in life are parallel in the spiritual side of things. So building a new house is symbolic on many levels. So excited to see that side of things rolling as well.
Yeah, whenever people tell me they've had a dream about a house, I always kind of think the house is probably the dreamer.
Exactly. It's in my opinion, that's my opinion. Those who, some are on a spiritual path, some are preparing to be on a spiritual path. Some people, maybe not even at all. But from my perspective, after seeking or being a seeker of really just a seeker of truth, a seeker of reality from a concrete perspective. I have found that anytime we see anything happening in the physical side of things, it is definitely reflecting what's happening, on a higher level, whether that be symbolic or practical. But being a traveler of the dimensions, I am excited to see what's going to be built at the same time on other levels of existence.
Do you still consider yourself a seeker?
If that makes...
it makes perfect sense. Yeah. It's something that happened to me. I was 17 years old, and one day it was different than the day before. I had this insatiable need to sort out what reality was or is. What I was seeing, what I'd been taught, and the world that I lived in was a very
disappointing reality. I really felt if this is all there is to, if my intended goal in life is to work to make money so that I can wake up another day to work and make money until such time as I can't work and make money anymore, that really wasn't working for me as a 17-year-old. So it got me quite seriously into seeking spiritual, philosophical things, and started a fantastic adventure. Impossible to put it in terms except fantastic.
Did you find a lot of resistance from others to your your leanings?
Yeah, it back then, we're talking about 1987. There was no internet except being used by the government or governments, and so there were very, very few people who even considered the subject matter. You had typical, the three major religions. There was a New Age type of movement happening that started back in the 60s and 70s. Didn't start, but it was a new resurgence, if you will. But to talk about multi-dimensional existence, there was one in a million that you could find who could sit down and have an appropriate discussion on that level. Today, with the internet, everybody and their dog is talking about it, which is great. It's dangerous because at the same time, everyone with a camera can put up a video, and if they speak with authority, then often people can take on belief systems that may not necessarily be good for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of cults out there, and it used to be they had to get you in person, and so they had to get past that fight or flight gut reaction type of thing, which people don't necessarily have as much in an online environment, as many cues to guide them away from the cult guru types. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's definitely got its pitfalls. I've found with my experience with the internet and communicating with people around the world, it's been fantastic. There's that word again. I like to use it just because, the things that you can experience with people that you could never normally know is an incredible adventure. But at the same time, there's this short-term attention span where, often people will jump from this to that to another thing without really giving any length of time to develop a depth in a particular thought. I think that's a critical issue for people today is, they'll watch a video on, any number of different spiritual concepts, and they'll walk away from an hour and feel like they're an expert, and, they really haven't put in the due diligence relating to, even the meditative time that is genuinely required to really transfer knowledge to wisdom.
Right, and the sitting with a question. There's this sort of, we have to figure it out right now, right this moment, and what we figure out is going to be the right answer. There's no practice of just sitting with something and being okay with sitting with that question long enough to really come up with something that's well thought out or deeply considered, or however you want to put it. I think that's really lost too. I find that even myself, I'm more uncomfortable than I used to be just sitting with something, out of habit, I guess, because we get used to this fast-paced mode of existence or something.
Yep.
So I'm having to remind myself, whereas in the past that may have come a little bit more naturally to me to just sit with something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To add to that, the art of sitting, there's a Taoist perspective, Tao and the art of meditation, where though Taoists may or may not necessarily agree with what I'm going to say now, but the whole art of meditating and meditating on a question, not having the answer to it, just the purity of the question, from my experience, has attracted assistance from, I could say, I'll just use the word people. I think that's a fine enough term, or entities, if you want, entities that exist in other dimensions, can resonate with that question and help in ways that we couldn't normally experience if we're just focused in physicality. The bridge to the, in my opinion, the bridge to the spiritual realms is through meditation and dreams and sleeping, and that trance type state is the bridge between the two, from my experience. So as a person sits and meditates on the question of, say, for an example, how can I maximize my capacity to love unconditionally? That type of question really perks up ears, if you will, on all levels of existence. And I have found by meditating on those type of questions that assistance comes in places that I never could have possibly imagined, had I not have taken the time to just unplug from the physical world and give the spiritual world or realms the opportunity to participate in the question.
Yep, it opens up other realms. And here's the thing is that not everybody has that experience, and but also not the willingness to be open to have that experience. So it's you've had this experience, I have not. Therefore, I don't believe that you've had this experience. So I'm not even going to open myself up to the possibility of having that experience. It's a sort of, where do you meet? Well, for myself, where I meet is that I've had your experience of not having that experience, and I've had mine of having it. So,
sure,
works for me, but maybe not for that person. I think you just have to be okay with people being where they're at.
I think it's critical, to because I was at a position where I'm certainly not today in the past, and had I not have had the grace from those around me to grow and develop, I couldn't have reached the levels, if you will, where I'm at now. There is the path or the adventure is as much of importance as the question that you're seeking to answer, in my opinion.
So can you get there with the music too? Because music can be a meditation as well, yeah?
Absolutely. Without question. In fact, in my opinion, that's what music is designed for. Depending on the... let me say this first. I've had... at the age of 17, I started an adventure researching all the schools of thought that I could get my hands on. Through whether ancient or modern, the different spiritual schools, different cultural ways of life. And because of that time frame of getting into everything that I could get my hands on, really really studying all the cultures that have existed on Earth that's been documented. I'll just say it that way. I have a pool of information, testimonies from others who have experienced spiritual things. So they're a witness and a testimony of something. So I have to, at the very least, give them the benefit of the doubt to say, well, either they're crazy, they're lying, or they're telling the truth. But as I've researched the different cultures and the different medicine men, brujos, witch doctors, holy men, and women, priests and priestesses, and as you go through the whole line, there becomes a certain parallel between them, certain similarities that when you get through the whole pile, you start to realize, oh, interesting. All of these cultures have been experiencing different spiritual things through dreams and visions, for an example. So that gave me the courage, enough courage to say, okay, well, if all of them are getting something, from sitting down and meditating and becoming an active proponent of seeking spiritual experience, then it's hard to put into words, but I ended up anyway, and I know of others who you come to a certain fortitude saying, okay, I now from this point realize that there is a creator, and that's my conclusion, and that there are other beings on other levels of existence, and all of these other people have experienced these beings and have had communications with them. So I'm then going to take the fortitude, whatever the fortitude I could scrape together, and move in an active forward direction towards those experiences. And I believe the intent is the biggest key, in that type of pursuit. As a nutshell, having some testimonies from other cultures and other people, for me, it was critical to. And yes, to bring back your question relating to music, sound is an intimate part of the equation. At least it has been for me. And so is light or colors have also played an important role, and not only symbolically but practically. And I don't know how deep you want to go into the experiences that I've had.
I do. Do you consider them mystical experiences or simply?
Well, I parallel them with all the people that I've read about in the different ancient texts. I just did the same thing they did, and ended up with the similar experiences. So it's just really that simple for me. But again, had I not have taken the time to research those cultures, I may not have had enough courage to actually sit down and push with intent. Using sound and light for an example, those we're intimately. It's part of our makeup as humans, if we can use that word. Color and sound and vibration and energy and electromagnetics and all the different levels of existence that reflect those things are how do I put this? There's a certain equation that when you put it all together, it opens a door, if you will, and those doors can be open through intent and color and sound. And that gets back into ancient Egypt, the ancient Hebrews, fascinating stuff. Some people want to disclude ancient texts because the people aren't here to give their witness and testimony. Well, like I said, when you go through enough of the stories, you get to a point where you're like, well, there's enough to at the very least feel it's probable, and I don't know how to put that into specifics outside of saying this, that I have learned some what you could call secrets. They're not really secret, but if you're a seeker, you'll find them, and that's a fascinating maxim. Those who seek the truth will find it, and that ancient equation is as old as the recorded history. I have a particular interest in Native American culture. I had the opportunity to do a heavy study in the Apaches, and through a particular scout that it would have been in the 1950s, there was an elder, and the Apaches were running out. Their culture was dying. They were running out of people. And the last scout that they had went out to find. He was spiritually led to go out and find two boys to download the whole scout program to, and one of which was a young Apache boy that was related to him, and another was a Caucasian boy. They were both preteens at the time, and the story goes through 12 books, and the author's name is Tom Brown Jr. And he's considered one of the top trackers in the world, and he's pulled in to see the CIA stuff and the FBI and all kinds of stuff when they need to track someone who's lost, or is running from the police, for an example, if they're in different murder cases and so on. But anyway, fascinating adventure, learning the spiritual framework and also the tracking skills and all that painted throughout these 12 books that Tom Brown Jr. wrote. He was a young boy at 9, 10, and for 10 years, the scout, they called him grandfather, he was very old, downloaded the whole program of how to become a scout, step by step, over a 10-year time frame, teaching these boys. So to get that kind of an insight is impossible unless I were to go and seek a scout within a particular culture and go through that 10 years myself, because they don't write books. The First Nations people don't normally write books on this stuff. It's especially sharing the cultural secrets, if you will. So had the opportunity through those books to see how grandfather, the scout, what he taught paralleled the information that you learn about from Jesus of Nazareth, almost identical from start to finish, the philosophies and the ideas and the spiritual experiences. Parallel, fantastic. So when you start putting pieces of the puzzle together from two different completely different continents, different cultures saying the same thing, it really gives me, a guy like me, the boost to really dig in. So
what are some of those same similarities that you find in the books and in the message of Jesus?
The first big one was the concept of there being a creator, and that's a critical position because it's foundational in both cultures, that there's a creator, and there is an open communication line between us as people and the Creator, and we have the opportunity to communicate in a very intimate and formal way. So that was a primary thing. Also, though, that both cultures believed that that we were made in the image and the likeness of the Creator. And so now when you put those two things together, we start to realize that the human potential is fantastic, provided both of these cultures are right. The idea that we can speak and create just as the Creator of the universe did, that we are in essence family, not just family, but our the design of what we are created to become is fantastic. All of the things that we read about in fictional stories of Superman, for an example, and I really gravitated towards the whole superhero thing as a kid, really feeling like I had a connection with Superman and his ability to fly, for an example. That ability to fly is multicultural. Most Christians don't know that Jesus himself flew, and that's documented with witnesses. This type of experience was also happening in the Apache history. And many other cultures as well. We've got South American cultures having the same type of experiences, the African cultures as well. Of course, the Asian cultures. I mean, the stuff of monks being able to walk on water and any number of healing, laying your hands on someone and healing them. Being able to read people's minds. It just goes on and on. The human potential, as documented through these different cultures throughout history, paints this picture of what the human potential actually really is. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but
well, here's the other question that comes to mind as you're talking about your own spiritual path and your journey and your process of discovery, is that in the West, you said how you had to look to other cultures, you had to study other cultures and other traditions in order to understand your own experience. What do you think it is that's missing from American culture or even Western culture, that it wasn't available to you within your own culture to understand those experiences? The language wasn't there.
Great question. The paradox of the Western culture is that they have been the torch bearers of some of the most fantastic spiritual lessons known to the history of mankind, and yet refuse to believe it. And what I'm referring to specifically is the information relating to Jesus of Nazareth and those who came after him. Through what is called the Holy Bible, a collection of books and letters, which I have studied exhaustively. I've actually been a teacher and am considered an elder in that community. And specifically, from my perspective, the Western culture understands that this information is in their opinion, what they'll say is it's accurate and correct. The Western culture, Christian culture, will say, yes, we believe this. And yet at the same time, they refuse to step into it practically and become the disciple that is required to actually bear the title of Christian or disciple of Jesus. He has a list of requisites, and they're pretty heavy. And the average Western cultured person is not at any level ready to enter into that level of commitment. There's a certain level of commitment that's required. It's not so much really has anything to do with the culture. It's just a matter of turning all of the distractions off and focusing, and having the strength and the fortitude to actually focus and do the things necessary to get those doors open, to get those experiences. And in my opinion, the commodity, spiritual commodity, is the experiences that we have. Those are the stories that become the hallmarks of a life of someone who's growing spiritually. All these different experiences. So to answer your question, I think I've done that okay, but to say specifically, the Western culture refuses to engage the information practically. It's something they want to read about and study and quote, but not step into in a practical way, where they go through the transformational process of becoming Christ-like, walking on water, healing the sick, raising the dead, flying, walking through walls. The list just goes on and on. Ultimately, the essence is the art of speaking and creating. That is the essence of the Christian message, if you will. The message, the actual good news that you hear people quote the gospel. That word means good news. And the good news isn't what so many people think that it is, hence the reason why they're not engaging practically. The good news is that we are, in fact, made in the image and the likeness of the Creator of all things, and that our potential is to be as he/she is, and I would add them, because it's a plural group.
A we with a capital W?
A we with a capital W. Yeah. Well, I mean, in Genesis chapter 1, the word for God is Elohim, and that's a Hebrew word that is plural.
That's a plural, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It means gods. Yeah. And so that's a real brain twister for a lot of folk who are trying to put all that together. But
yeah, especially when the focus is monotheism. So there is one God, and that's the stuff that you hear in church. And mm-hmm. And today we also have this prosperity gospel stuff that's out there. This nonsense about
that's dangerous stuff.
It really is that. You're supposed to somehow be rewarded financially for your devotion to Jesus. Yeah. Where did that come from? Where the hell did that come from?
That came from Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's a corporate perspective. The churches of today are all corporations. They're 501c3 government corporations. They come under the parent corporation, which is the federal government. A lot of folks don't know that, but our governments are corporations. So the Western style of religion has the most powerful information known to mankind, and yet refuses to use it practically. So it's a bit of a conundrum, I have to say, because culturally, I grew up going to church, but none of this ever got brought up. And then as a teen, when I was 17 and started my own movements forward, I was studying Of course, the Bible. I had the Bible in one hand, and I had Aleister Crowley in the other hand, and Ledbetter and White and Blavatsky and the list goes on relating to writers and authors on the subject of the Kabbalah, which is a Talmudic spiritual system. Goes in conjunction with the Talmud, which is a Zionist Hebrew. Well, it's really not Hebrew, but Hebrews were into it. But sadly, folks are getting all caught up in the collegiate aspect of religion and the social aspect of it, and completely missing the point of it all, which is the transformational process, the metamorphosis of the larvae into the butterfly. And that process, it's as much chemical as it is spiritual. We actually do become transformed. That's verbiage used in the Greek New Testament. The Apostle Paul uses that word, metamorphosis, and that's something that once it starts, the larvae has no power or control over it. It happens to them naturally, and the way that we're made, the essence of who we are. Once that process starts, it takes over, and we naturally become. You can use the word little g gods. The Hebrew culture was very clear in Psalms 86 verse 2, or was it 82 verse 6, that we are all gods, those to whom the word of God is given. And Jesus quoted that when they were wanting to stone him for when he was saying he was the Son of God. He's given them, these are Hebrew people wanting to stone him. And he's like, come on, give me a break, guys. It says right in the Psalms that we're gods. Why are you giving me a hard time about saying I'm the Son of God? And really getting in their face with it, saying, hey, come on. Not only am I seeing what's in what the spiritual books, but I'm living it. How about that guy who was blind over there? Look, he can see now. How about the fish and the loaves thing? Transforming and multiplying, physicality. That whole idea of changing water into wine. There is a level of authority over the physical existence that is granted to someone who goes through that metamorphosis.
Well, maybe one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Maybe one of the things that stops people's spiritual growth and transformation is that there's no openness to continued revelation. So, for instance, Jesus is always presented as this historical figure. So this revelation happened 2,000 years ago, approximately.
Sure.
And, that's when revelation happened. So it's never presented as something that's ongoing throughout history and then ongoing throughout your own spiritual growth and development. That there's new revelation that continues throughout your life. So I think that's part of it, maybe culturally. That may be, a big stumbling block for people who that's the only story that they've been taught is the one about Jesus, but not the real one about Jesus, but more the Republican Jesus version of Jesus.
Right. Well said. Republican version. Yeah, the suit and tie guy.
Yeah.
I agree with that to a certain degree, absolutely. But I would say that it's my opinion that it's part of our makeup of who and what we are, that we have, through our conscience, We have a barometer of what's right and wrong, and we are held accountable because we have that aspect of who we are. And I have to say, at some level, that though the culture, the churchianity culture, is definitely a stumbling block, we should, irregardless of the things that are wrong or incorrect, we still should, through our conscience and through our understanding of right and wrong, and the gut, our instinct, the spiritualness of who we are, be able to rise above those things, if it is true that we want to become the thing that you're reading about. So I can only
that may
speak
be
from
part of the journey too. Is
Sure
the
it
stumbling
is.
block itself,
Sure.
of the culture of your birth, whatever that stumbling block may be, to get beyond.
Absolutely. I again, my opinion. I'll use that term, my opinion, often, but the stumbling block is a part of the equation, and it's critical that it's there. The way that a tree starts as a seed and grows, it pushes through the dirt, and it's a pushing. Life is about pushing to a certain degree, and pushing to become that which we were made to be, whether it's a seed becoming a tree or we becoming like our Creator. There is that nature of who we really are that needs to have that stumbling block. We have to have that resistance to a degree to really become players in the game. If we were just had everything handed to us, like a lot of people feel that they should, believing in Jesus is all I got to do, and He's just going to give me everything I need, and all I have to do is ask. That is not the anyone who has studied the history of spirituality knows immediately that is not the nature of the universe that we live in. I parallel natural law, to what we're saying, and there's certain things that are evident. They're self-evident, and they're without reproach. Whether it's the sun coming up or gravity, or any number of other things. Things are the way that they are, and they need to be that way for the good of all, I guess would be a way to say it. The thing that I'm really grateful is that through all the cultures, there is a parallel that can be found. This idea that I gravitate towards the Hebrew culture because that's been a part of my lineage has come from Western Christianity. So I have natural tendencies to relate to that, and it may even be in my DNA. I don't know, but so when I hear something like Jeremiah chapter 29, the prophet Jeremiah, like many historically prophets who talked to God, they actually had face-to-face conversations with the Creator of the universe. This is particularly interesting to me. If I had a computer problem, I'd go to Bill Gates. I think it's just a smart thing to do. So if if I have a creator, well, I'm smart enough to know that I better go, if I can get him on the phone, I better give him a call to figure this thing out. I need to know how to become all that I can be. So that's always been my attitude anyway. So when I hear about a guy named Jeremiah who had documented with witnesses conversations with the creator of the universe, and when he says, him quoting the creator, he says, and those who seek me with their whole heart will find me. That's Jeremiah chapter 29. It's the promise of the creator that if we seek him, them, with all of our heart, which in Hebrew means intent, cognitive is involved, mental, that whole push that I was talking about. Those who seek me with their whole heart will find me. What a fantastic challenge! If you do this, I'll do this. So I took that hook, line, and sinker personally. I was just like, I'm all about that. And when you add that with, again, other cultures having certain people within their community that had face-to-face conversations with the creator of the universe, that stuff to me is just fascinating. I'm like, yeah, give me some of that. You can keep your cable TV. That doesn't even come close entertainment-wise to having these kind of experiences, especially after the first few. I'm like, it became like crack. I'm addicted to this stuff. This is fun.
Do you think that some of these experiences that people are that you're interested in and that people are having could have possibly been induced by, let's say, DMT, magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, those type of things?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's cultural. It's there, and there's no question about it. It's been a part of the program. Different cultures have had different relationships with those type of things. I can say that the Hebrew culture was unique, where certain types of what we're talking about was definitely looked down upon. What they were and which ones, I don't know. But you can read about, again, Paul was writing about sorcery. And the Hebrew culture had a perspective relating to sorcery, and they felt it was a bad idea. Sorcery was a combination of seeking counsel from demonic entities and using drugs to do that. That's the essence of sorcery. In fact, if you check the original word in Greek, the word that Paul used, it's pharmakeia. The Greek word pharmakeia was the word in Greek for what we say when we say sorcerer or sorcery. And pharmakeia, of course, is the root of pharmacy. We're talking about druggery, basically. So culturally, the Hebrews were very not into seeking spiritual advice and counsel from demonic entities via using drugs. So now that's just one aspect to the subject matter, and I can point to that specifically. But I'm not saying my interpretation of that isn't that you got to throw the whole thing out. It's just a matter of I think it's a very mature subject matter. I don't think that it's a subject matter that those with limited character should be necessarily getting involved. And I probably should maybe say something about that specifically. In all the cultures that I've studied, that's another aspect in relations to spiritual development. There's two ways to spiritual power that I've learned, and I've checked them all. There's two ways to power. You can take the extreme left path, and that's where you work through hate and destruction and that whole side of things.
We're going to take a break, and then we'll find out
Sure.
about the other way when
That's
we come back.
That's a cliffhanger for you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Bridge. I'm your host, Kira Young, and you've reached me on Revolution Radio, simulcasting as well with Real Liberty Media. And tonight, my guest is William Thomas Anderson. Before we took a break, we were talking about two ways to power, and you had just finished up. We were just finishing up on one way, the left hand path. Right. And then we were going to get into the other.
Right. Yeah. Just to recap the left-hand path, there have been throughout history certain men and women who have typically it was their family. They inherited the position within the community or culture to. There's been different words are used, but whether it might be brujo or witch doctor or whatever, but they've chosen the evil side, and I don't mean that religiously. I mean that they genuinely get off on hurting people, and having power over people. And all the cultures of history have had people. We often think of Hitler, though who knows what's true and what's not true about that. But culturally, there are people who dedicate their lives to the forces of evil. And when you go far, far into the left, you can tap into a certain level of power by communing with entities on other levels of existence. They assist in the process, and by this, you can obtain some pretty serious spiritual power, also physical power and mental powers. And so that was the one side, and the other side of being able to get into serious power is the exact opposite of that. And what brought me to speak on this particular subject, or part of the subject, was the issue of character. Character, as I've learned, is the key that opens the door to different understandings and different types of communication with different beings of love and compassion. And there is a list of rules and regulations of how our development works, and what other beings can communicate with us and what they can tell us, all reflective of our character. So it only makes sense. You don't hand a loaded automatic rifle to a little toddler. They're obviously going to hurt themselves. So, purely out of necessity, certain spiritual thoughts and ideas and practical powers and abilities are limited strictly due to the character makeup of the individual. And thank goodness for that. When I was 17, boy, when I read about healing the sick and walking on water and raising the dead and speaking and creating, man, I was all about that. That was cool. And seeing that as a human potential, I wanted that. Now, my character at that time was not even close to the type of person that should be able to have access to that kind of stuff. So it was real frustrating for 10 years for me. I went through a 10-year period where I was studying all the stuff and not doing a thing practically due to character limitations that I had. And it wasn't, I started the path on at the age of 17, and it was at the age of 27 when I finally got to the end of my ego, where I realized, if I don't really take this character thing seriously, I am never going to become the type of person that's going to be capable of handling the stuff, the level of power that we're talking about. So I finally submitted to the idea of, I'm not going to lie for anybody ever, period. It's a position of honor. It's a truth unto death. And other character traits, obviously, as well. You don't want to harm people. You want to help. In fact, you want to be the opposite. You want to be someone who's giving and helping and so on. So having doors open to different spiritual capacities, I have been able to experience since some by no means am I maxed out, but I am excited to say that due to having certain character developments, I have been accessed to certain things. So the pursuit of power, you got to go one way or the other. The middle is just a whole bunch of talk, really.
It's a bunch of BS. There is no middle path. There's no middle way.
Well, it's the middle. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's you got to start somewhere, and if there wasn't kindergarten, you sure couldn't have first grade or second grade. So the middle path is where we all start, and coming out of that is really indicative of our what do we want to be? Do we want to be making big money on Wall Street, or dedicating our lives to building a business that all you do is you make grommets? Well, I mean, this community needs grommets. That's fine, but if you have to give your whole life over to making money and not having the time to develop in a personal way, that to me is just a living hell. That's my opinion, although others seem to be quite fine with it. But from a spiritual perspective, development perspective, that is just something that for me that just wasn't in the stars, if you will.
Yeah, it's slavery is what it is. If that's what your life is all about, it's a certain level of slavery. Yeah.
Some people are happy being a slave, and that's historically that's factual. I've studied slavery from a historical perspective, and it was throughout history. All the cultures, to a great degree, have had slaves, and in some cultures, it was a great position to have. Especially there's certain types of positions. For an example, if I own a slave, I am 100% responsible for that slave, all the slave's food, all their clothes, all their medical, all their dental, every aspect of their life. I'm responsible for if they're going to be healthy and productive. So if you have a benevolent owner, and he really cares about you, then that's a great thing. If you're from a family you come from nothing, for an example, that can work out very well. Many different slaves throughout history have actually reached quite high levels of notoriety. In the Hebrew culture, again, there's a chap by the name of Joseph who had that exact thing happen to him. But I'm not trying to say that slavery is good by any means, but I am saying that if you have a benevolent owner, then he also would be responsible for if you had a wife and your kids and their kids and their kids' kids, they're all come under the liability of the slave owner for all their needs, which in a hard world, that can be a benefit, depending on where you are in the world at what particular time of history it is. But if you're looking at not being able to get a job and not being able to eat and feed your family, a lot of people, intentionally became slaves for a period of time. Often it was a term that you could even, get paid if you became a slave for a year or 2 years or 5 years or 7 years, whatever the contract was. that slave owner would be responsible for you and your family and all the stuff you need. And then when you're done, you get the bonus of X amount of dollars or property somewhere, or, depending on what the contract was. Anyway, that's slavery.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, things really haven't changed that much.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Our modern system, the only difference between the average guy, doing 9 to 5, and a slave in the ancient world is that, the owner makes you go away and then come back in the morning. So, off you go. I don't want to be responsible. Here's just enough for you to live on. Go be responsible for yourself, but come back and do your job tomorrow. It's exactly the same thing, except without the liability, the headache, if you will, of managing the slaves. And that's it, in a nutshell. Yeah. I saw that at the age of 17, Kara. I saw that at the age of 17. I actually saw the culture as a slave culture. Historically, this is fascinating. Human farming is the oldest crop known to mankind. Human farming. It's a maybe the crop isn't the right word, but it's like cattle or sheep or
human trafficking.
Whatever. Human farming.
It's older than prostitution, or just part
Absolutely.
of it?
Goes all the way back. And human farming, that's where, you get two humans, a male and a female, and they procreate. And woo, now you got 3. All right. And you keep that rolling. It's like putting seeds in the ground. You got to harvest, after a period of time. And you can sell that crop to others, or if you want to purchase a mine, for an example, you're going to need somebody to work the mine. So what better way than getting into slavery or human farming?
Or if you're going to start a war, you need somebody to fight it for you.
Of course, exactly. And that's a huge part of culture, obviously. Security, protection. All the Roman senators, for an example, the majority of them, they each had armies. That's how they became senators. They'd each have their own standing army. It was a requisite, basically, to some degree. And historically, you look at all the kings and, all the people who, quote unquote, are in charge, they have all got standing armies. You can talk about Obama today. He's got 4 standing armies. Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines. And then you can add on the FBI and the CIA and Homeland Security, and around and around it goes. There's a powerful king for you.
Yeah. And maybe anybody who gets in there will be hated because of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a part of the equation for sure. Mm-hmm. But the one thing though I can say, relating to today and the hope for us as a culture is that there are people who are making some very serious changes to the culture. For an example, like in the 1960s, the very first time in history on a global level, there was a list of human rights documented. And that list of human rights is not exhaustive, but it's darn close. Where international law, which trumps all national law, has pulled in all the countries of the world, the federal governments had them agree to this list of human rights, and to not only recognize them, but to protect and enforce them. First time in history, the whole world has got human rights for every single person in the world. Now, that might sound a bit grandiose, but we're still growing into it. They started in the 60s, but part of that UN declaration was that each of the governments of the world had to be making steps forward in changing all of their laws to reflect these human rights. So this is where the contention is in today's world, where we see these different patriot groups and a lot of folks who are studying alternative law and that whole subject matter. I am a huge proponent of the study of law and understanding it, because it's the essence of culture. But the fact, though, that we have a list of human rights globally, with jurisdiction over every federal government in the world, is a fantastic time in history. And so for me, being a proponent of human rights, I am just privileged to be a part of this equation at this time in history. Most of the world don't understand it, and that's why I do what I do from a human rights proclamation perspective. The reason why I do interviews like this and do the videos that I do online and YouTube and network with all the the guys who are in the alternative law movement. I talk with them, all of them, for the most part. And because it's this time in history where we actually have the capacity as a culture, a global culture, to implement a level of human rights where we really see a global change to the way that people live. And let me say this to say that. The better I understand what your natural rights are, the better I'm going to be able to treat you as a neighbor. Okay, and the better you understand what my natural rights are, the better you're going to be able to have a relationship with me as your neighbor. And so when you put that on a global level, top down, all the governments and all the people of each country are all equal before the law, and we all have the right of self-determination. We all have the right of association, who we're going to associate with. We have the right to believe from a spiritual, religious perspective what we choose to. Also politically, and those are protected by international law. Once we grow into this situation, we are going to see a change globally to the way that we live our lives, and the way that governments do governing. It's all of it is going to change really within the next generation. It's going to take one generation, one more, to really get this changed on a global level, to actually really see these human rights come to fruition in each person. And so it's a big. Go ahead.
You really think that the elite won't find its workarounds? That it's going to manifest in a meaningful and powerful way, rather than being co-opted and worked around.
Well, the biggest challenge that they have is that we've got 7 billion people on the planet, and they're a handful, a few thousand. So they're really between a rock and a hard place. Things are going to change whether they like it or not. And it's just that simple. Either A, they're going to have to eliminate, trim the herd down to a 500 million, 500 million, like we read on the Georgia Guidestones. Somebody somewhere has these ideas of a global population decrease. Or they're going to have to reckon with how to live peacefully with 7 billion people that want to treat each other with respect via the spirit of brotherly love. I think I talked about this last time. That's the first declaration in the Declaration of Human Rights via the UN. It's law, international law, that we have to treat each other through the spirit of brotherhood. And that includes all the politicians and the police and the military and blah, blah, blah. Everybody it actually says everyone, so it's inclusive for all people. So we actually have the perpetrators, those who are out there to dominate. We actually now have the ability to come together as a culture and bring them to task through international law. Go ahead.
You talked a little bit earlier about the alternative law movement. Could you, for the listeners, kind of go into what that means a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. There's been, you go through history, there's always been philosophers or those who mentally consider jurisprudence. And what jurisprudence is the philosophy of law. And so there are some folks who want to make money, so they become lawyers and they go do business law or any number of other forms of law. But there are those who like myself, who are more concerned with the jurisprudence side or the philosophy of law. And what we do is, we're not in it for a career. We're not trying to make money. What we're trying to do is get a good grasp on the way things should be, and then be a part of the catalyst to see those things implemented. So there's a group of us. There's a whole bunch of us. I mean, there's a lot of us, frankly, who are studying law, but we're not going to try and pass the bar. We're just getting into the law books and the cultures and working it out. And really, that's why I talk about human rights. Human rights are the fundamental aspects of jurisprudence. All law is built on human rights. Human rights is the foundation of all law. So, and why I beat the human right drum so much is that we can change the culture through the understanding of the inalienable rights that are self-evident for everyone. 100 years ago, women were not considered. They were considered property 100 years ago, culturally, globally. And look at what's happened.
100 years ago. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Not in every culture, but the most, especially the Western and the Asian, and it was a very small amount of cultures that saw women as equals or as greater, but they have existed. So what we've seen, though, the big change that we've seen just in from that aspect of the human rights side of things, what a huge shift globally. Now we're seeing this wave of women being treated equal before the law. A woman could not take a case before the court, period. They did not have that capacity. They didn't have the capacity to do business. To a great degree, as far as being a business owner is concerned, and we're talking about the legal side of things. So that's just one example of a massive global movement that we're seeing of equality, coming into a legal force. So the alternative law movement there's a bunch of folks who just want to get out of jail free, so they're just looking for tricky ways of getting around the law. So there is that element, but the guts of it, or the guys who are really taking this stuff seriously, are really more concerned with human rights and seeing governments change to reflect what our inalienable rights are, to do what they've already agreed to do through the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, which is the UN documentation. So yeah, the alternative law movement are guys from a non-professional, meaning we're not in it to make money. We're in it to change culture, and some folks are happy about that. Some folks are not happy about that. Some folks, like I said, are using some of the information to try and get out of jail free, and not have to do certain things that might be considered something they should be doing. But the essence of it, it's a fantastic, natural, organic movement. There's no head. There's no one's in charge of anything. It's just a lot of different guys from, basically have intellectually they're of, a professor level. And they're in, we're all independently studying, but comparing notes, and through that work, there's people who are paying attention and watching and spreading the news, and we are seeing huge things happening, around the world relating to, John Doe standing up and saying, "Hey, on behalf of myself and my family, we will have our rights recognized, protected, and enforced, period. And we're gonna go to whatever length is necessary to see it done." And a lot of the protesting that we're seeing around the world is a reflection of that. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about people who just want to use it to get out of, figure ways around the law and things like that, are you referring to, let's say, some of the sovereignty movement people, or anyone in particular, or any sort of trick that you've seen out there in particular that you want to get into?
Yeah.
As an example?
Well, there's some different jurisprudence subject matters, philosophies, or ideas that have become popular with certain, people groups, and whether it's trying to get out of paying taxes, for an example, is one thing that some folks will do. Some folks, for whatever reason, they've lost their license, maybe for drinking and driving or whatever. So they're trying to figure out a way around the law to drive without having a driver's license. Guys who have child support, but trying to get around that so they legally don't have to, deal with that. Or guys who go to jail or trying to get out of jail in whatever way that they can. They're trying to find some loophole where, they can get things turned around. The big thing today that I'm seeing today is this idea that if you just refuse to use your name, because it's the government, it's copywritten it, which is ridiculous. That if you refuse to use your name that you were given when you were born, then the government has no jurisdiction over you. It's silly, but there is a lot of people who are trying to use that as an argument in court. And, the judge will say, "Is so-and-so here?" And they'll say, "Well, I'm here in that matter." And they'll say, "Well, are you so-and-so? Are you John Doe?" And they'll say, "No, I'm not John Doe. I go by a different name, but, that's the name of, the straw man or the corporation that was created through my birth certificate." And it's a birth certificate subject matter, which to some degree there's some validity, but at the same time, there's just a lot of folks trying to, they've actually really done something wrong, but they're in court trying to argue some pretty complicated jurisprudent concepts, and failing miserably and making a lot of people look bad, claiming to, be, representatives of the alternative law side of things. Free man on the land is one example. Sovereign citizen is another one. Those don't exist, by the way. Well, free men on the land to some degree. Robert Menard, who's become a contact of mine, great. I really enjoy him. But, he created a society called Free Men on the Land. So that's been kind of, in Canada specifically, has been targeted by the Canadian government and the police and so on. But in America, it's the sovereign citizen movement, which is you can't have a sovereign citizen. A citizen is a position within a government. It's a public office that you hold, or a public position as a citizen. So if you were sovereign, then you couldn't be a citizen, because a citizen's submissive to somebody, the government over which they're a citizen. So a sovereign is someone who would, like the Queen of England, who considers herself above all of the national governments. So it's pretty convoluted, Kira. It's very convoluted. There's just a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas, and there's absolutely no organization whatsoever. But we have the law, which is codified through acts, statutes, codes, policies, and procedures. That's the legal side of things, or the corporate side. And then we have natural law, or private law, or common law, if you will. There's a lot of different jurisdictions, but a lot of folks are looking at common law now as a remedy, or a mode of remedy to getting around the commercial acts, statutes, codes, and so on, that should only be applicable to commercial ventures or people acting in commercial capacities. But like I said, it's pretty convoluted. It's really hard to put into a short statement, because there's just a very, very broad spectrum of different types of people studying different subject matters with different intentions.
Right, and I've seen so much out there about the name fiction stuff, the birth certificate stuff.
Yeah.
And this sort of idea that you just declare yourself sovereign, and then, their laws don't apply to you anymore magically.
Well,
and I see those people get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, it's because they're a lot of these guys actually have questionable character. That's really what the bottom line is. I mean, what's your character? There isn't a judge in on this planet that if they see that you've got strong character, that's what speaks to them more than anything. It's not what you're saying, but it's who are you? I've had many different hearings over the last 10 years that I've been heavily studying law, and I'm recognized in the Christian community as an elder. I'm internationally recognized through the Salvation Army and other agencies for my relief work. And when a judge or an administrative person is talking to me, that's what they're hearing. It's that type of person. They are immediately have an understanding of, okay, well, we know that there's a track record here that's proven publicly that this is at least in general a pretty solid person. But if you're walking in with dressed like you're a gangbanger, and swearing every third and fourth word and using slang and so on and so forth, that type of person is going to be treated in a different way in a court. And it's really about culture more than anything else. Law is a reflection of culture.
So how does that figure in, the statement that you've just made about how different people are going to be treated differently in a court of law? How does that fit in with the international human rights?
Well, right. Let me say this. This idea of being sovereign, okay, is an ancient concept. And it is, in essence, we're all sovereign. And what I mean by that is when you use the term sovereign, it means there's no one over you. So we have a natural right or a private right or a human right that's recognized first in the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. It's the most powerful right that anyone could understand. They need to understand this one. And it's the right of self-governance or the right of self-determination. Okay? And it's through this concept or this idea where folks get the idea of being sovereign. I have the right of self-determination. That's international law. I decide for me what's right and what's wrong. I decide for me what I do and what I don't do. I decide for me where I spend my money and where I don't. I decide for me with whom I associate. I decide for me what I believe to be true and what, from a religious or political perspective. I am my own master. Okay, that's what the right of self-determination means. That I decide for me everything, basically. So the confusion from that is that it doesn't emit us or exclude us from what we might term common law. If I harm somebody, then I have the absolute liability to make amends for that harm, and that is the essence of law. It really boils down to if you harm someone, then you have to make restitution. If I steal from someone, then I have to make restitution plus some for the inconvenience. If I kill someone, murder someone, then there has to be a remedy for the injured parties. And so I can't, just because I have the right of self-determination doesn't mean that I should be excluded from liability if I harm someone. Okay, so that's the basically the bottom line there. Some folks have this idea, well, I'm sovereign, so even if I harm somebody, I don't have to be liable. And not even the Queen of England has that position. Of course, she's held liable if she harms someone, without question. But it's just immature people reading things and deciding for themselves things that just aren't socially accepted. Common law is based on what a community decides to be right or wrong. That's what common law means. If you're a First Nations community or culture, within your community, you decide, the intricacies of what's right and what's wrong and what happens if someone does whatever. Those will be the common laws of that particular culture. Same can be said for, whether you're in Canada or England or the United States or Australia, New Zealand. That's the Commonwealth. And those are all common law jurisdictions. So we as a culture decide, in general, the issues relating to, injured parties and torts and how to deal with those things. The challenge that we have is that in the last, 50, 60, 70 years, the common law has been codified, okay, or it's been turned into civil law. And that type of jurisdiction is how, like in Louisiana, for an example, they have a unique legal system there. It's from France, and it's civil. It actually goes back to the Roman civil law. And in Canada, we have the province of Quebec that's under the same style of legal system. There is no common law jurisdiction there. There is the civil law side, which is all acts, statutes, codes, policies, procedures, rules, regulations, and so on. To a great degree, it's military, and to a great degree, it's also commercial. But those are the nuances. What they've tried to do across the board globally is to codify all of the common laws. And that's basically what they've done. Most of the courts that you'll stand in today are civil law jurisdiction or commercial jurisdiction.
So, for the last part of the show, we're coming towards the end. Throughout this conversation, you pretty strongly identified as a disciple of Jesus. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about compassion as a spiritual practice as it relates to your disciplehood of Jesus, if that's a word, disciplehood.
Yeah, sure, I can dig into that for sure.
Cool.
I am that. I'm a disciple of Jesus, but I'm also many other things. So I'm not exclusive to that. Modern Christianity would, if they actually really understood what I believe, there might be some contention, because I require the love and compassion to be the primary foundational. You could call it a rule or a law, if you will. It is a law. It's the law of love. And that's an ancient concept that many cultures throughout history have used as their foundation for their cultures. Love and compassion, from my perspective, is it's the essence of who and what we are. It was through which the power that we were created. It's the thing that makes our atoms tick. To a great degree, it's a building block, but it's also a power, and it is actually who and what we are. It's the rudiment of what we are, the nature of what we are, and the creator of the universe. I can quote 1 John. John was one of the guys who hung out with Jesus. It was one of his disciples or students or friends, all of the above. And he said, God is love. And those who know God love, and those who don't know God don't love. So in that is quite an interesting mathematical equation. And in that, we see parallels to many cultures throughout history, saying the same thing, that the creator of the universe is in fact love, and it's an aspect of who and what we are, and through it we have the potential to become that which we are designed to be, and the further away we get from it, the more corrupt we become, or less pure, if you will. You could talk about, pure is a great word. I like the word pure. What pure, the essence of the word pure means you're 100% of one thing and you're 0% of everything else. So those who are pure in heart will see heaven. It's a fascinating word, great word, I think. So, but it denotes, a loving, compassionate person.
And purity is the beginning of ceremony. It's the beginning of all. It's how you begin your journey.
Absolutely.
Unless you want it to be a jacked up journey, you could better start with purification, right? Well,
that's a natural law. Love is the essence of purity. They're synonymous. To be pure and to be a loving person are synonymous. They're the same thing. And so to enter into ceremony, you want to shed, all the darkness, all the selfishness, all the ego, all of the hate, all the animosity, all the negativeness, and you want to, like you might, shower under a waterfall, just have all that stuff washed away. That is the first step of ceremony. It's also the first step of entering the kingdom of heaven. And many different cultures have different ways of saying the same thing. But ultimately, you're taking on the essence of who and what we are, being loving, compassionate beings. And again, any aspect of us that aren't loving and compassion are corruptions of who and what we are, or unnatural tarnishes, if you will.
Right, right. So compassion also has this way of transforming us. We were talking about, to bring that discussion of our spiritual evolution being a process of transformation. Compassion is key to that as well, because it points back to the we with a capital W, that we're in this thing together, and so our sadness is universal, our joy is universal, in our ability to create our way out of whatever darkness we come upon is universal, and that should be celebrated.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Compassion, from my perspective, is the execution of love. It's the practical application of love. It's the externalization of love. It's the verb in the sentence. The noun would be love, and the compassion would be the verb, the doing word.
Yeah. After the being comes the doing.
Sure. which I think, personally, I feel that it's a natural occurrence. Anyone who is pure, or is filled to the brim with love, or is just a loving person, the natural expression would be to share that with the world and all beings around them, whether that be trees or animals, or the Creator, and all things in between. And I think in that is the multicultural understanding of the essence of who we are. Most cultures through history have this rudimentary understanding that the expression of love is the foundation of who we need to be.
And not just love, but radical love. Love in the face of destruction.
Right.
Love in the face of no love. And
that's the world we live in. We live in a world where there is hate, and there is evil, there is darkness, and all we need to do is look at the pedophilia, and the murder and the rape and all the reality. That is the reality of the world we live in. A lot of folks want to stick their head in the sand, and just want to think on happy thoughts, because that's somehow going to fix the world. Well, that's not how it works. We have to have those loving, compassionate thoughts, and then we have to take liability for the world that we live in, for what we know, for an example. It's a bit of a contentious issue for me. There's too much stuff going on, too many quote unquote good people not doing what they should be doing, to be dealing with the problems that we have in the world today.
Because as a survivor myself, right, the way that I have experienced others, with their heads in the sand, is as aloneness. Because when you have been injured in a way that people don't want to deal with or look at, they won't deal with or look at you, because they don't want to be reminded of their own frailty, or their own, their own victimization, whatever it may be.
Sure.
So it's not just not doing anything in general, but it's not doing anything when there's something for you to do right in front of your face. Sure. Right there, where there's opportunity after opportunity after opportunity.
Yep.
To be there.
Yep. To encourage you on that thought, it's my perspective, Kira, that if I see something and I don't make an effort to rectify the issue, then I'm an accessory to the problem. I am then as liable as those who are doing it. And that's a heavy thing to carry around. It has not made my life very easy, but I have been living with that perspective now since 1997, where I've taken on a liability for the world that I live in, and the things that I know of to be that are true and need to be changed. So it's there are men and women of honor in this world that have taken that perspective. And is causing the change that we're seeing, but sadly, it's not as popular as I feel it should be. But, and again, this comes back to the human rights side of things. Once the culture has it grounded home, the actual reality of our natural rights, then from that point forward, we will see everyone engaging in a very powerful way and being liable for the problems that they're seeing and being part of the solution. That's a part of the natural law framework, is the fact that if you see a crime, you're liable to that's where the idea of citizen's arrest comes from. That's a common law liability, where if you see someone injured that by another party, you need to be a part of the solution. So it's heavy, but that's where, if we're going to be adults, in our culture, then we have to be liable for the things that we know and we see.
We absolutely have to be, and it makes all the difference in the world.
It makes it hard. This whole idea of the pursuit of happiness, I'm not really inclined to agree with that idea, just because of the world that we live in. If we're going to dedicate our lives to the pursuit of happiness, then we're going to be avoiding the things that we need to be dealing with, I think. I'm more inclined to say that we're the pursuit of joy, and that is an emotional position where we can have peace through the storm. Happiness tends to denote revelry.
Yeah, the pursuit of joy, and joy has a vibration to it that's a little bit deeper than just plain old everyday happiness.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, everyday happiness is good times, but the joy, that vibration of joy, that's a mystical experience that's available to us as humans. The experience of a as my favorite musician right now, J.J. Gray, puts it, the joy that knows no opposite. Yeah, that's a mystic talking right there. So let's, before we go, because we have a little tiny bit more time, let people know about what's going on for you musically. We're talking about music, we're talking about human rights, we're talking about all these things that you're involved in, and they're all connected. Yeah. And they all influence and feed each other.
Right.
But the music's important, so.
Yeah, it is. For me, it's something that has been developing since the 80s. I started playing music, playing in rock bands. And I started my human rights concepts and ideas from a band called The Clash. And they wrote many songs on the subject matter. But the whole punk movement back then was about political and civil rights and so on. So I've been growing over the years as an artist, and I am now to the stage where I'm excited to say that I've got just a killer band. Everyone's got national act level experience. They've all toured with national acts. Guys in the band have toured with Blackfoot and Big Brother and the Holding Company. That's Janis Joplin's band, and B.B. King and Roy Orbison, and it just goes on and on. Fantastic band.
Wow. I'm very
yeah.
impressed.
So very happy to have the band together. We're working on a new record, and I'm hopefully going to be in the studio come June, July.
Well, we'll have you back when you're ready to release it, and when you guys tour, please let me know. If you're anywhere near Virginia, I'll come and see you.
It's a deal, Kira. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much.
All right. Bless you.
Bye-bye.